hello. Look at you, appearing on the camera again. What's going on? What's going on? Do you say hello? Oh, say hello to everybody. What's that? Hello? Hello, are you here for Monday Musings? Are you? You here for Monday Musing? Ooh, I don't know what's got into him. He's making a habit now, isn't he, of popping in. Well, you should. It's your booktube channel. Though you're kind of an absent host a lot of the time, aren't you? Yes, you are. Yes, you are. Dear, oh dear. So, I'm curious. Today's Monday Musing. Are classics worth it? What do you think? The reason that I'm musing on this Monday is because, like many a morning, I'm kind of scrolling through YouTube and it suggests certain channels, and one booktube channel popped up, a rather large one. At least I think it's fairly large. It's over 100,000 subscribers. It's a charming young French-Canadian woman called Books with Emily Fox. I'm sure some of you are familiar with her. I'm not, so I just thought I'd click on it because the title appealed to me. The title of her video was Are Classic Books Worth It? And it's a 1 week, one shelf reading vlog. So each week she has her shelves color coded according to genre, and she puts the number of the shelf on the paper corresponding to the color that corresponds to the genre. She puts it into a pot and draws it out. And last week, I suppose, she drew classic works, and she chose two to read, which was one in French, which was Cyrano de Bergerac by Edmond Rostand, and the other was the first volume in the complete works of Sherlock Holmes. And as I said, she doesn't really have a particularly good time with them, and I suppose she questions whether or not are classics worth it. Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel, Book Time with Elvis, with me, Mark, and another episode of Monday Musings, and I am going to give you my thoughts on whether I think classic books are worth it or not. I probably could be a really short video because I could just go, yes, they are. Anyone who watches this video knows that I do have rather a love of classic literature. It's really something I haven't thought much about before, because I would have thought the answer to be obvious, for me at least, that they are worth it. And there are several reasons why. I think, of course, the impact of classic literature that it has on our lives are relevant. They're as relevant today in many cases as they were when they were written. It explores themes that are still extremely important to us, those themes of social inequality. Of course, these days you can probably substitute in things like race as well, or gender bias and that kind of thing, which of course maybe were not themes that were explored, although perhaps they should have been at the time those books were written. But the overriding theme then, social inequality, and I think those other inequalities and prejudices and things like that do fall under that. So they're all issues that need to be tackled, and they had to be tackled then, and they need to be tackled today as well. So we haven't really moved on. Of course, we all still feel love, and we still feel loss. So those things are still particularly relevant. And classics are everywhere, whether we realize it or not. Of course, there have been countless adaptations of classic works, whether it be actual adaptations, film versions of the works of Shakespeare or Charles Dickens or something like that, but then sometimes they sneak in under the radar. You might not realize that they were classic. Of course, these days people do know that. I didn't know, for example, back in 1995 that Clueless was an adaptation of Jane Austen's Emma. I had no idea. I didn't really know much at the age of 15, or care much, I suppose, about Jane Austen. Things have changed now, but I always enjoyed the film Clueless, and I have to say, I still think it's quite amusing, and that in itself also kind of makes me want to read Emma. I haven't I did read Pride and Prejudice, which of course the more modern adaptation would be Bridget Jones's Diary. Again, I'm not sure I realised that when I watched it, whenever that was, back in 2000, 2001, something like that. Um, However, I did since know that, probably at least by the time of Bridget Jones 2. And, it's fun, and I think those kind of modern film adaptations can bring in new readers to classic works because, as I say, after watching Clueless, I kind of want to read Emma. I had no idea that "Oh Brother, Where Art Thou" is a loose interpretation of Homer's Odyssey. That was something new for me. As the film Warm Bodies, based on Romeo and Juliet. Of course, I knew West Side Story was indeed based on that. And I did know, probably again after the fact, about the 1999 film 10 Things I Hate About You being set or based upon Shakespeare's Taming of the Shrew. And there are countless others. I mean, by all means, leave some of your favourites down in the comments below. And also, you can't overlook, I think, the fact that the classic literature has had in terms of impact on how literature and other arts have developed over the course of time and into the modern day. It's heavily influential on subsequent generations of artists and writers. It's very hard to be original these days, I think, because a lot of the am I actually going to use the word trope? It's not a word I particularly like, but it might fit in this situation. You find a lot of these tropes and things have been done before. I think, look at how many books recently are based on retellings or bringing classics up to date. There's quite a lot of them. You have those Madeline Miller books based on the Greek classics and things like that. So they're definitely relevant. If they weren't there, we would feel bereft, wouldn't we, of wonderful stories and ideas of those that came before us. And also, I think another reason why classics are relevant and important and worth your trouble is because, as well as helping us to explore themes that are universal to us, the human race, human species, it's also valuable for us in understanding, preceding generations and the people who came before us. It helps us to understand the society and the historical context and cultural significance of things, the culture in which our forebears lived. It gives us extremely valuable insight to that society and different time periods. And some works, some very old, classical works of literature are almost as important, I think, as historical documents rather than just works of fiction or stories. I mean, people say, for example, the Tale of the Genji or the Tale of the Heike, are important because although they are novels or at least poems and works of literature, in the case of the Heike, they are insights into what life was like at that time at the different courts of Imperial Japan that maybe other primary sources and things like that, they're not available. These are, we can draw on them and gain some kind of historical understanding. And I think, we can see, I'm always loath to bring up racism and that kind of thing, but we can see, of course, the attitudes of our forebears to things like that. We can see what things mattered to them. You look at the works of Charles Dickens or Victor Hugo, and social troubles are extremely important to those authors. The poverty surrounding them, the trouble of the working classes and things like that. So you see what maybe they even had some impact as well on the social change that we are benefiting from. Of course, it helps us as well when we read classics. It broadens our understandings of all of these things. Um, Reading them help us also to develop. Reading classics do help us to kind of develop maybe other mental skills that we need. I think it's part of the reason we read them in school. It helps with our critical thinking abilities, which of course are very important because often the works can be quite complex and a lot of meanings are hidden. And also, these works have survived, and for a lot of people, they are greatly beloved. And there's got to be a reason for that. And I think that in itself makes them worth exploring. There are, of course, some negatives. Going back, of course, to issues of race and how different races are portrayed in classics can be, of course, problematic. The language of classical literature can be a problem for people as well. They find the style and syntax difficult to cope with. It's challenging for them. The style of writing is unfamiliar. And I would say, though, a strange thing about that for me is that if you're afraid to read certain classic works and you want to get started, then probably in some instances you're better off starting with a non in my case, of course, a non-English classic, because you will find a modern translation, and very often the modern translations are writing in a more modern way. So therefore, it's easier for you to read. I mean, having just read Les Miserables, the Christine Donaher translation, it was a wonderful read. She wrote in a really nice style, and I'm sure if I had read a Victorian translation, it may have been. Well, I mean, I suppose I'm a little bit, of course, more used to it because I enjoy reading literature from that period. But if I wasn't used to it, it may have been more difficult and therefore more daunting a task and endeavor to embark upon. So yeah, you might find that your best introduction to reading classics may lie in getting a good modern translation to get you started. Um, and then, of course, there are classics, I would say, like Sherlock Holmes, which Emily Fox reads in her video, which linguistically are not particularly challenging. I mean, for her, of course, she says that English is her second language because she is French Canadian. So, of course, if English is your second language, it is going to be more challenging than for somebody whose first language is English. But I think you will find that as a native English speaker, starting off with something like Sherlock Holmes is going to be far easier than starting off with something more complicated, like I don't know, for example, what? No, you know what I mean. Anyway, I mean, the list could be endless, but it's funny, isn't it? Because you know, nobody, of course, makes an effort unless it's like something very old, where it's not even really English, or at least not the English we speak today, like Chaucer. Nobody brings, nobody translates into modern speak generally Jane Austen. They might create a retelling, but you're not really going to find, unless it's written specifically for as like a Penguin reader or an Oxford reader, where the story's been abridged and condensed into easier English for learners of English. Most native English speakers are not going to find Pride and Prejudice that has been rewritten, unabridged, for your benefit of avoiding, the difficult language. But all that comes with training, like anything else. The more effort you put into it, and train yourself to read it, the easier it becomes. Once you've read one, it's much easier to read others, and then you can gradually challenge yourself with varying degrees of difficulty. So overall, I think classics are definitely worth it, and they're worth reading, they're worth exploring, because they are wonderful and timeless, to be somewhat cliched about it all. But I'm curious. I'm curious as to your thoughts. I don't, I know a lot of people I interact with enjoy reading classics as well and reading classic literature. Maybe not everybody does. And I'm curious to know what you think about it and what classics you enjoy reading, or maybe, as I said, what are some of your favorite adaptations of those works. Okay, I guess that's it. I hope it wasn't too scrambled. I want to, obviously be as conversationalist as I can be. And sometimes, it's hard to keep absolutely everything together in my head at one time. I think the issue with my hair at the moment being rather somewhat chaotic is only a mirror of what is happening underneath the surface. Everybody, thank you so much. Do have a wonderful day, and maybe, hopefully, Elvis too, will be back again very soon. Do take care. Bye bye.